Every episode brings fresh inspiration, and today's conversation is no different. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Kait Rhoads, an artist who loves to dream big. Her intricate glass sculptures, limited edition jewelry, and public artworks all reflect her relationship with the ocean. Today, we dive deep into everything from subjugation to underwater ecosystems to taking a surprise twist into espionage. In the conversation, we look at the intricate ties between her art making, community, and ecology. Because as Kait says, my method of construction mirrors how my life has informed me, with individual elements woven together to create a strong whole. We dive deep into those experiences, like growing up on a boat, to studying glassmaking as a woman Fulbright scholar in Italy, and how those shaped her vision. In Venice, she learned glassmaking techniques that were only passed down through patriarchal lineages for centuries. She was able to honor those while imagining the new possibilities. This journey led her to create her signature Hollow Murrine method, a technique that involves blowing glass, cutting it into hexagonal rings, fire polishing them, all before she even gets to constructing them into stunning sculptures that are collected around the world. You can see this method in her Salish Nettles, which is her largest installation, commissioned by the Pacific Seas Aquarium, which is three jellyfish constructed in this hollow marine method that are suspended from the ceiling. In her newest exhibit, Do You Love Kelp? She's asking the viewer to reflect on our relationship with these underwater forests. Now, Kate's artwork has captured the imaginations all over the world, from visitors going to the Seattle Art Museum, the Corning Museum of Glass, the Shanghai Museum of Glass, the Tacoma Museum of Art, the Toyoma Institute of Glass, and so many others. So I'm looking forward to introducing you to Kait Rhoads. Hello, sister. How are you? Kait, I'm so happy to have you on today.
I have a lot of gratitude for your invitation for me to be in this space with you, Jody, and thank you so much for having me.
Oh gosh, you're welcome. I'm a little giggly, and I got to tell the listeners it's because we were just chatting about the Venetian style glass and how much eye candy that they can pop in there. So, yeah. And since you've spent a lot of time in Venice, I hope we get to talk about it.
Oh, yes. We'll
Cool.
talk about it. We'll get there.
We'll get there because first, I mean, let's talk about your relationship with the oceans and the water and her ecosystems. You got a real thing going.
Well, just to give a little bit of background, I grew up on a boat in the Bahamas and Virgin Islands between the age of like 5.5 and 12. So I spent a lot of time in the water. It was a really beautiful, pristine time for the environment, and before a lot of bacteria and algae kind of choked off many of the coral reefs that exist in those spaces. So I do feel fortunate to have experienced that when I was young, and just living on the water, like I could jump in anytime, and it was so much a part of my life. My mom ran a dive business when I was younger. So when I was 10, I got my PADI license and helped her run the business near St. Thomas, United States Virgin Islands. And we lived there for a number of years. So just being in and out of the water as a kid, it was so amazing. And coming out here to the Pacific Northwest, I've dove just a few times here because it's mighty cold. And just seeing all the seaweed here really blows my mind. I used to just study how everything went together, and the different critters below the waters. I thought they were just so fascinating. And that just extends here to the Pacific Northwest as well, where we just have fantastic kelp and seaweed, and of course, other living animals, and I mean, fish and invertebrates, which I'm very, very drawn to.
I was going to ask if you had done some of that diving out here, like even on the Hood Canal, because we have the giant Pacific octopus that are out here and octopi. And I'm like, that just seems really cold.
Oh yeah, very, very cold. I like the Caribbean octopus are smaller and less intimidating, but I have to say that I did volunteer at the Seattle Aquarium for about 7 years. And during that time, they would let us feed the Pacific octopuses in the tank, or octopi, they're both correct. And it was just fantastic to be able to interact in a small way with the beautiful beasts that we would have at the aquarium. And
Oh,
we would only keep them until they're ready to reproduce, and then we like put them back in the wild so that they would reproduce, have a have a chance to reproduce.
oh, okay. Wow. Yeah. So
But
from
they're, yeah,
childhood, yeah. Thank you for volunteering for, I think not a lot of adults realize how fulfilling volunteering can be and being of service for even just a little bit of time.
I look forward to doing more of it when I get to the age where working is not as much of a possibility for me. I think being involved in your community is very important. And it definitely benefited me because I was around cutting edge knowledge of ocean science, and I would get to study the animals and plants and the plankton, everything from this area. It's really educated me so much more about the microbiology for this area, and also just intimate knowledge of how cute pinto abalones are when they eat seaweed, or what does a sea urchin look like from the bottom, like its little mouth, how does that look, and how do anemones reproduce, what do they when they broadcast spawn, what do they look like? It's so there's so many beautiful things that you can catch, and if you're there like every week for a few hours.
Oh, what a special opportunity. And it just takes a little bit of time and responsibility for an individual to just go and look at what is in their environment. Because, yes, they are part of the environment. I mean, they are part of us. We are part of them, really. Yeah, I love your
Yes.
relationship with the waters and wanting to take care of it and give it a voice or give it some acknowledgement. So let's talk about your installation. You have a new installation up at Method Gallery in Seattle, and it's Proto Kelp. So talk to us a little bit about, well, talk to us a lot about it, but like to start, you have been working in glass for so long. You've shared with me that this was a little bit of a different process because it's in this non-commercial gallery. So how did how did this come about? And I mean, you have a bunch of words that are on there, so that was a part of your community's outreach with it. I mean, this is such an involved project. I just don't want you to leave anything out. So I'm going to try to help.
Well, I applied to have an exhibition at Method Gallery, which is a volunteer run space. So it's has very limited opening times, but the show's about two months long, so there's opportunity for people to see it. So after I was awarded a time frame to show my work in, I was very fortunate to apply to and get a city artist grant from the Office of Arts and Culture. And that grant is just to research, design, and implement like a public event in 2 years' time. But you have to team up with an institution that isn't specifically an arts institution
I
in
see.
order to create opportunities for the public to either interact, like be at your opening, or to just to interact with the public and to bring awareness. For me, it was like science and the arts together to a
Hmm.
certain extent. So I was so excited to get that grant so I could spend money on designing a campaign to reach out to Seattle residents to participate in my proto-kelp installation by giving me, or collaborating by sharing words of appreciation for kelp. I really care about ocean ecology, and I'm so taken with the kelp from this area because we have, it's like mega flora, mega aquatic flora. It's so unique, so beautiful. And in the Puget Sound, it's quickly disappearing. So I want to bring people's attention to the importance of these underwater forests, and to the work that's being done to restore them in this area as well. But by making it a positive message with the exhibition rather than, yeah, and to offer suggestions of how to support kelp or to support, ecology in your community, as well as inform people just about kelp in this area.
Yeah, you're just proving the point of how dynamic artists are, and especially glassmakers. You're not just in the studio, like, a lot of times collectors will just think about an artist in their studio and they're like painting something, but glass artists are different. And we're going to get to how collaborative that had to be for you. But also, like artists that work with climate focused issues really go out into the community and listen to how dynamic you're. You're like, I wanted to create a campaign. And just to give listeners more of an idea, is the campaign you're talking about, is that Do You Kelp? Is that the campaign that you're
Oh yeah,
referencing to like
the
get back in there?
campaign was Do You Love Kelp? So
Nice.
it has a little QR code. I put an advertisement for that in one of our local institutional printed magazines. I don't know, print. It's not quite The Stranger,
Oh,
which
yeah.
had been out of print during COVID, but it came back into print this summer. So I was very lucky to place an ad in there and do a little bit of social media work with The Stranger, and supported by Office of Arts and Culture and with the Seattle Aquarium, because they ended up supporting the project as well by inviting me to take part in some of their beach naturalists, their volunteer beach naturalist programs, where they have volunteers on the beach with vests that identify them as being attached to the Seattle Aquarium, and they're usually out for low tides just to talk to the public about what they're seeing and to give them information. So we did two kelp themed events, one in West Seattle and one almost to Shoreline and North Seattle. And so I went to the beach and I would wear a vest with the Seattle Aquarium on it, and then I would just walk up to people and ask them, I'm doing this project, I'm a Seattle artist, do you have 3 words of admiration for kelp? And so I filled up a lot of information, and I got a lot of emails from people with words as well. So it was fun. We gathered about 300 words, a little less than 300 words. And the campaign's still kind of going, because I'm going to continue this project after this. So I'm still actually collecting words. So I think I'm over 300 now. So yeah,
Oh
very
my
exciting. So,
goodness.
and I took those words and I made a big list of them. And then I used those words to put them onto glass in the exposition. And it was a challenging thing to do, to sort of like match the words to the size of the glass that I had. And to actually get the words onto the glass was very interesting. And then I would engrave them into the glass. And you'll see some images here. If we're talking about proto-kelp, which is the larger installation in the space, and it's supposed to mimic what a kelp forest or a piece of large kelp would look like if you were in the environment with it. So it's suspended from the ceiling and it comes down about 6 feet, and it's made out of rope and these portions of glass tubes that I have these words on, that they're beautiful words. I have the list here sort of with me here.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
so we have a lot of repeats. Our most repeated word was home. And then there's a lot more sort of like slimy, pretty, a lot of nutritious, nurturing, slippery,
Nutritious, yeah,
delicious.
because we can, if it's edible. We have a
Yes.
lot of kelp that's edible here.
Oh yeah, all of our seaweed is edible. It might not taste good, all of it, but it's edible at least.
Oh, I didn't realize all of it was. Oh,
Oh
cool.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, that some just doesn't taste very good, but we have some very traditional kelps here, like kombu, which is used in Japanese cooking for seasoning, and that's bull kelp, pieces of bull kelp. And they also use, Asian cuisine uses a lot of, oh, what is I'm forgetting the name of the dark one that is often fried and put into sheets, and there's lots of
Niguri.
different seaweed.
Um, yep.
Close. I
Mhm.
probably won't remember it. Anyway, so this installation, it's called Proto-Kelp because it's mostly just an exploration from a model that I made that was based on bifurcation, which is one turning into two. So it was just sort of 6 layers of small glass tubes that I made during a residency that I linked together with copper wire. So it started with one at the bottom and then went to 2, 4, 8, 8, and then from there 16 and 32. So I was curious about taking this like 7-inch tall model. What would that look like in a room very large? And I really wanted to, in my public artwork, I incorporate uh, publicly generated words, or people help me make the work. I try to involve the community in making the work so that once it's placed, that the people in that area have a memory of it and they can tell their children about their connection to it. It's very,
Love that.
I'm not exactly sure why it's important to me, but yeah, I think that
But
links
you're,
back to being
yeah,
a
you're
glass
not
artist.
questioning it. You're
Yeah,
going with it.
working in a team to do things. Like I like involving people and making art. Um, and somehow that kind of concept of getting ecology, the ecological message out to people in a gentle and welcoming way is something that I've incorporated into public art. So this is my first foray into non-public art involving the public.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Uh, there's a few things I wanted to expand on in there. Um, the first one is, you like to involve a community, you like to involve a lot of people. And for those listeners now, I mean, even with your huge glass background, the Italian style of making glass is in a team effort. Maybe you just extended your knowledge from there into the community, and being a purveyor of place and community wanted them to go and have their own legacy there. But how, as a question in here, you've added words onto your glass. So where this glass is different than your other glass, and I was hoping you could expand on how this installation let you experiment with more techniques, because I've never seen you etch words into glass.
Yes. Normally, or not normally, for the past 20 years, I like components. I like to work with components in glass. So for the past 20 years or so, I've been experimenting with these hexagonal tubes that are cut into segments. So I call them Hollow Murrine because Italian patterning techniques, they use Murrine as like spots. And so these are sort of spots to me that have a void in them. So I like to call them Hollow Murrine, and you can see some are more crisp and some are less crisp hex shapes, but they all sort of fit together. And I link them together with copper wire. This,
Yeah.
for many different reasons, this appeals to me. Living on a boat, I would do a lot of rope work and macrame. So I've always thought of fibers, and I studied theater before I came to glass and costuming. So I've always kind of been comfortable with construction with a softer material. And so yeah, so I've been working with this kind of linkage system for many years. And I really wanted to try something new with the proto-kelp, try a new component, one that's been around, like a portion of a glass tube. These two are glass tubes. When I make them, I blow them into a metal mold that keeps them the hexagonal shape. But the glass tubes I use for proto-kelp and for reach and the proto-kelp model, those are just smaller glass tubes that are free blown. And then I either curve them or wrap them around a pipe to make a spiral shape, and then cut them into smaller pieces. And in this case, place the words onto the glass and engrave them so that they're in there permanently. And so, yeah, it's a little bit of a different component, but it's sort of like the beginning of my relationship with exploring this component and seeing how far I can stretch that component. Can I make it depict seaweed in a realistic enough fashion? What I've done in this installation is something that's more reductively mathematical and not quite a literal representation of seaweed or kelp, but more of a feeling, because it looks a little bit more like a terrestrial tree or like a mangrove upside down, but and less of a super flowy kind of kelp form.
Yes, it is less ribbony and more knotty on
Yeah,
this
there's
one.
more rope. There's rope in it, actual rope, which I'm really liking that, harkening back to my childhood tasks that I had when I was young around the boat. And I really find it very meditational to work with the wire or the rope, because I can do it by myself as opposed to the glass, which I do in a group of people in a hot shop. And it can be like you have to work very hard in the time allotted to you and be in the moment, and you can't step away from it and take time to look at things. So
You
I like that
can.
with having the components, it's things that can come apart and be put together. So I can give you a little show and tell, just a little bit. Oh, I've got this guy. So this is like another experiment that I did with the tubes.
I
So
love
I just
it.
like this sort of chaos of tubes, because it's like so different than something that's very ordered to a certain extent. And this is just an example of something I did hot, but doing cold work with it, cold, and thinking about it and composing and taking apart and putting back together. That's something that appeals to me, because I like to be able to study the artwork and to like adjust it and have time. In the hot shop, it's got to make your decision and it's over. Like, it's time is money. And
Right.
these days, it just I don't have as much access to the shop as I used to. So, I have to be frugal.
And time is money, like you said, and being frugal and also listening to your medium. Like, it is fluid, it is molten hot. It will then harden, and then you can't, to cool down, and then you can't necessarily reuse it again.
Well, especially with the tubing, right? Yeah, like if you get your shot to do it, and if you mess up, then it can be. But I really go by the Italian axiom of using everything you make if you can. So if I have a piece of tubing, oh, I cut big sections. Well, I can cut small sections too. And what do I have? Some leftover funky ones? Well, I'll cut them even smaller, and I'll pop them in the kiln and I'll fire polish them, because then I could use them later, kind of like hoarding. And we call it the whole elk theory. That's a term that Richard Marquis stated about. He's a member of the glass community that makes beautiful sort of mid 20th century Italian work. And then also he does some found object kind of sculpture with it as well. But he had time, he had a Fulbright to study in Venice and Murano. And so he really got this he picked up this Italian mindset towards like using everything that you can and not being wasteful. And I love he could use like every single little piece from what Marini he pulled. He would save it and use it for something else, for something else, for something. I love that. I love
Love that.
the
Gleaning
economy,
every.
the economy of it. And that speaks to also caring about the environment and not really desiring to be in the shop all the time because it's resource heavy. But how can I still practice this craft I've done for 30 plus years, 35 years, and still and still feel good about my relationship to the environment?
Absolutely. Just gleaning everything and being as creative as you can. Is that, you think, is that where your limited edition jewelry
Well,
came
I've
in?
always loved jewelry design, and that's something that I've studied early on in my art education. And even before, like the real first art thing that I was taught was macrame. So I made, like bracelets and necklaces and things like that when I was younger. So I think I've never really felt the difference between art that you wear on your body and art that goes like on the wall or on a pedestal. It's all about creating something beautiful, I guess.
Yes. Yes. The beauty.
Yeah, so I feel that some of my wearable sculptures really inform my larger sculptures. So I love to be able to be fluid and to work like in many different series at the same time. So if I get frustrated with one thing, I can move to another, and it helps my mind stay fluid and able to be a good problem solver.
Yeah.
Nimble,
And
nimble, maybe
nimble. Yep. I
not
think
fluid.
people in the accounting department would, say arty and yep. Way to
Yeah.
keep it going. Way to just keep everything in motion. And like you said, just keep it fluid. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
try try my
Ah,
best.
pardon?
I try my best.
You're very creative. And I love your sensibility with colors.
Yes, it's been very green lately, but
Yeah.
that's all right. It's my favorite color, so.
Ah, maybe the what did the water have something to do with that in the Caribbean green, or do you think that's an Italian?
No, I just think I love green. I there's something about it that's so gorgeous. And it might have to do more with plants, but so much kelp is green. So and
Yes.
green can be warm and amber, or green can be brownish, greenish, or it can be gold, or it's very fluid and very beautiful.
Yeah, I got to tell you, what I think is so beautiful are your color choices for your installation, your jellyfish at the Pacific Seas Aquarium. So, how that's all glass, and how did that go down? Did you see, did they do a call for art?
They did a call. They did a call for glass art, and I applied in January of 2017 because they were building the new aquarium down at Point Defiance Zoo and Aquarium in Tacoma, and they wanted, I think they really wanted to have some cute little jellyfish or something. And but I always have if there's an opportunity, I'm going to dream big. And so I was very inspired by our local sea nettles, which are beautiful jellyfish, and the coloration that they have. And I went in and I competed against two other people who probably were being sensible about cost. But me, I was very up forward with saying that it would be my first public permanent installation, and that I wanted to make something large scale and something that would knock your socks off. And
Oh,
that was very
yes.
interesting, that I was interested in doing that. So,
S-
and then I didn't
This,
know at the time I would be drawing in the community to help me make the artwork. I think my 50th birthday was in my studio space, and I invited everyone to come and help me make the artwork. So I had assistants in the space and helping people to put the sculpture together. It was super fun. And because I lived and worked in a studio space that the public could access, if we had open house, and I worked on the project for over a year, so I would have a sign up during open house and say, if you want to come back and help me make this, then sign up and I'll send out a letter and then you can come and help. And so I would have family members bring their children, and I had Tacoma high school students come. I had so many different people just come and help me out for a while, and some of them being my aquarium volunteer friends that I've made over the 7 years of volunteering as well. It was very, and it was interesting, and maybe some from my yoga community, some people, not many people from the glass community, because of course they would like to be paid for their work, but
Yes, yes.
just like this big cross section of people in my life. It was very wonderful, and I enjoyed it.
It's huge. So it's huge. It's your large. Do you think that's your largest sculpture to date?
I think cumulatively size wise, yes. So we had three jellyfish, and I spent a long time going down to the aquarium and observing the jellyfish that they raise there with the jellyfish man, Chad Widmer, who is the jellyfish biologist for Point Defiance Zoo and Aquarium. And it was wonderful, because I think the brief was made that they wanted jellyfish to go on the ceiling. And then when I won the chance to make the jellyfish, I really talked a lot with Chad about the life cycle and how, and I got to look at like the beautiful planner, like the really baby jellyfish, strobilia, like the way moon jellies grow on a stalk when they're young and then pop off and fly away. And I would get to look at lion's mane jelly, which are crazy jellyfish from this area, right? They can get to be like 10 feet big or so. Their tentacles can be 10 feet long, and they're definitely bigger than the size of a human out in the ocean where they're not messed with so much. But they're just amazing jellyfish. Yeah, anyway, I'd never really spent time getting into jellyfish, so the scientific research was very important. And then when I constructed the sculptures, there were the one with the jellyfish bell completely open, one with the jellyfish bell closed, and then one sort of in between, flowing in a circle, each about 9 feet long. And depending on, I think we had like a 3 foot, 2.5 foot wingspan on the most open jellyfish, and then maybe like 18 inches on our most closed jellyfish. So I would construct the bell of the jellyfish, and that's like the cap, in the same manner that I constructed this. And again, with like reds and oranges and yellows, I knew that even I was very fortunate in that they did the lighting for me, but I knew the lighting would never be enough to like light these giant sculptures. So I had to be, focus the lights mostly on the bell. And then we had the tentacles that came out, and the tentacles were just sort of, a lot of people refer to these as octopus because they have 6 arms that come off of them and that are made of stainless steel. And then I developed a different type of component. I call these Hollow Murrine. I call the component I developed to slip over the steel and to form the tentacles, I call those rigatoni, because they have ridges on the outside of just sort of like a cylinder. And the ridges are clear, so they catch the light and they magnify the light in them, because I knew I wouldn't be able to light them very well. And there's a window behind them, so it really helps to make them sparkle and show off. And yeah, like, so then this component, which is a new component for me, I call that macaroni. So
Okay, that's
very Italian-based names,
means
like
oh,
for
that's so
pasta,
funny.
of different kind of pasta. So
Yeah.
because those are components as well, right? So
Yeah. There's a couple questions that are a little off script, and did you have to carry, because you were working in art in a public place. Did you have to carry the insurance to make that happen?
Oh, yes. I pay insurance every year. I have some temporary public art up in Shoreline, Washington, just north of Seattle. And you have to carry insurance to be able to do public art, just because something might happen to the art. My business is an LLC, so that if I get sued for anything, it can't be reached past my business into my personal life to,
Right, right. Through that.
right?
I mean,
Because you're liable for anything that goes wrong. So you have to make sure that the construction is perfect. And I worked with an engineer, and I worked with a facility that also brought the engineer to me, but they fabricated the metal and they installed the work, because these were big pieces and I didn't have a lot of experience at that time. And we had to integrate them into the design of the architecture. They made a
yeah.
big panel that went on the ceiling. Yeah, this piece it's pretty big. I think it's like 15 feet by 5 feet by 5 feet. It's like a little rectangular area that I could fill up. But so they had to install a panel on the ceiling, and then we had to like remove these slats from the ceiling, put our connection through the slats, and then like put the slat back up on the ceiling. It was kind of complicated, using a lot of scissor lifts but I was so excited because working with components like this,
Yeah.
because it's suspended above someone's head,
Yeah.
it has to be that if it breaks and falls, it won't hurt a baby. And if I did a big sheet of glass, I would have to coat it with plastic to make sure if it broke, it wouldn't fall. But in this case, these are all cold connections, we call it. That's not fused. This is actually has a little movability to it.
Ah.
So if one piece breaks, it doesn't mean everything breaks around it. So if damage happens, it's not likely to hurt anybody just falling on them. So I was very lucky to be passed with engineering in that regard. Also, although the forms were very large, because of this sort of negative space,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't weigh very much. Every one was like
Mm.
under 90 pounds. So
Oh.
it was we didn't need as many attachment points because it didn't have to support as much weight.
Oh, okay. That's a
Like,
really interesting.
right, because otherwise you'd have to have like a steel panel on the ceiling and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
it was so fun to I had to design each of the pieces so they could fit out of my studio door. And for some reason, where I had my studio, my live work studio, it was a standard size door, not a double door, standard size door. So everything had to be 35 inches or smaller. And some of them we had to sort of like maneuver out of the door a little bit, but that's no longer the case in my studio now. I have larger access if needed. But yeah, so it was sort of like design problems to work around, and I felt very lucky that all worked out really well.
That's, I think a lot of people just don't know any of that, how much work goes into it on the red tape side of it, all the bureaucracy side of having your artwork in a public place.
Yes,
And I
and
hope you were able to
usually,
make some money off of it.
yeah,
Like,
they give you a timeline in the beginning, and then a lot of times if you're working with a building under construction, there's delays. So your timeline can be delayed, and that can be beneficial. And the way you get paid is that you have to submit an invoice. You're allowed to submit X amount of invoices over a certain amount of time. They want a certain amount of the work to be done for each invoice. So I was really fortunate to be able to work. I put my money in towards working with Hilltop Artists, which is an institution down in Tacoma that works with youths in the school system there, ages 13 to 21. And so it's this great program that really wraps around and supports the kids while they're going through their education and gives them this sort of outlet of glass. And I mean, they're working really strongly with Pilchuck now to give because like the art education isn't really pushed
Yeah.
when they're in school, like to kind of, there's a lot of connection between Pilchuck Glass School and the Hilltop Artists to kind of fill that gap a little bit as they get older and finish with school and stuff. And it's really fantastic program to be involved with. So I had their help at Wilson High School, and also, which is now I think the Hilltop Heritage High School. And
Mm.
then also working down at the Museum of Glass, I donated money to have a cohort of the Hilltop artists be there, as well as the as Chad Widmer, the biologist from Point Defiance Zoo and Art, because he was a wounded warrior, so he worked with glass as like a veterans thing at the museum as well. So he was comfortable there, and it was great to be in front of the public and to get to explain what we were working on, because it's like watching people pull tubes is sort of like watching paint dry. Like what, it's not very dynamic per se, but it was very exciting to work with the team there who made all the rigatoni for me, and also to work with the students there too.
It's so collaborative. I mean, everything you're doing is like using these feminine principles of care and collaboration and being creative.
Yes. And you know, you and I have had conversations about this previously, but that sort of, I guess, I think sort of having that sort of feminine outlook. And for me, glass working is sort of, or is meditational, is like a healing thing for me. And I like sharing that with other people as well. I've been teaching glass for years. So like sharing how to have fun and how to support other people in your community. Glass blowing, I was always educated in the Italian style of glass blowing, which is that you do it in a team. And I just love that. I love that many hands can make something happen very quickly. If everybody has like a part in the steps of the process, that you can have an engaging time working together, having conversation, and getting the job done at the same time. So it's like it's like having fun, but you have to know all the steps and understand what you're
Yep.
doing. And then you're doing this thing that you're good at, and you're being successful at it, and you're sharing that with the people around you. It's very intoxicating as an art practice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And just to go back a little bit, just to hear that it's part of Wilson's high school program. I mean, it is 13 to 21, so 21's beyond high school, but just that core fundamental learning group here in the Northwest, we were teaching glassmaking.
Yeah,
It's like pickleball and glassmaking, what could be better?
nothing. I don't know about
Nothing.
pickleball. My knees are kind of ruined from the hot shop, but
God,
I love,
yeah. Be
yeah.
in the hot shop. I mean, just the other day when I was at your installation, and for the listeners, there's a few glass blowers there, of amazing in their own creativity. And it was like just hearing that someone else had to have hand surgery, and yep, it's their turn to have the surgery time. Like carpal tunnel finally got them, or just because when you're making glass, you're just always turning, using your forearms and your hands and fingers to keep that pole turning, to keep it in rotation, to keep it centered, to keep it hot.
And in control, yes. Very much like you would imagine a pottery wheel, but on the side. Like we have to keep it turning, have to keep the centrifugal force with to keep the shape sort of symmetrical, etc.
Yeah. It's just,
It's a dance, it's choreography. I mean, I just love that about the body memory of working with glass. And I don't get to do it often, but when I'm pulling out a tube and it's so beautiful and I can see the color through it and it's gorgeous, it's like just like I just get so happy. It's it's a little ridiculous, but um I work to take care of my body so that I can continue to do this practice that I love so much. I really don't want to give it up ever. And I've seen some Italian maestros like take the pipe and make a demonstration piece at 92 years old,
Oh,
so I
yeah.
mean, not Lino's not quite there yet, but I mean other maestros than Lino, and yeah.
Right.
And I guess that's sort of,
Yeah, he's only 90. Lena's only 90. He's
yeah,
not
he's only
92
90
yet.
now. He's only 90. Yeah. Right. And then yeah, I guess that I talk a little bit about my education, which is that I've been to a couple different universities. I originally went to liberal arts college in Florida, called Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida. And then I
Wait,
studied,
you did?
I did. I
Yeah.
did, and I studied theater, and like they didn't have anything for art other than, I think they called it like creative or expressive arts. So I did writing and theater and arts, and then every year I cut out writing, then theater, and so I kept studying art, but it was a very small program with the teachers all had things going on. So I transferred to Rhode Island School of Design for painting after that. Although I was interested in sculpture, I had more painting experience. And I successfully transferred in. And after a year of painting, I got advanced standing. So I took a semester of glass, and then I never left glass. I just stayed there and finished out my undergraduate degree at RISD. And then I roundabout moved to the area, the Pacific Northwest, because I had a residency at the Pilchuck Glass School in
Okay.
94. And I left the area for grad school in upstate or Western Tier in New York at Alfred University, which is mostly ceramics university, but it has a glass program as well. And I got my graduate degree from there, and they helped me get a Fulbright to study sculpture in Murano. So after, I think it was it was 2001, I lived in Venice and Murano for about a year.
This is
And
huge. This is huge because, first of all, academically, a Fulbright is confetti and balloons and like, wow. I mean, academically, a Fulbright is a gold star.
yes, and the university was very supportive, helping me to get my application together and organized. But thank you, Mary McGinnis, for helping me to write my application, because it's very difficult for me to understand the mentality of like a committee that is judging, not because I'm so used to being an artist, but I was one of the only two artists chosen out of 30 to 32 people to go to Italy. And most of them were studying law,
Yeah.
medicine, literature. There weren't a lot of people studying art. And even when they were, it was sort of like, oh, 15th century letters from artists to, it's very
The
specific.
Illuminati, the
Yeah.
illuminated script, or
Yeah.
yeah.
But I wasn't there to blow glass, and that was a little difficult. That was my first break in blowing glass
Okay,
in
wait. This is
10
huge
years or
also.
10 years or so. So I was there, and I helped start a school. I helped run a school that just started to teach the people on Murano um, free classes on technical things. So hot shop, cold working, flame working, theory classes, drawing classes, computer classes. So it was very exciting to be there at the beginning of Abate Zanetti, and to work underneath Rosia Barovira Mentasti, who was the artistic director of the school at the time that I was there. And it was just so fascinating to be able to go with her to see collections and to meet people like Alfredo Barbini, who was the 92-year-old artist that I saw make artwork, who's just, he's the maestro that taught maestros that I studied under, like Pino Signoretto and to just get to be with my friends that would take pity on me and have me come help them make glass because they knew I missed it so much. And so they'd say, come help us make these giant solid sculptures. You can do it. I'm like,
But
I don't want to do it, but thank you.
yeah, and for a lot of those listening and watching here, um glassmaking in Italy was passed down traditionally family to family through the men.
Yes.
And it was very, I mean, it was very secretive because each of the family had their own style, technique, object that helped that family make their income. Or even further back, it helped Italy make some of that currency coming in with tourists, and it was part of their economy.
Right, because it was very highly sought after in the 14th and 15th centuries. And there were a lot of laws keeping people on the island of Murano. They weren't killed. They were just highly, highly, highly taxed if they would leave Murano and work somewhere else. So it was
I
very interesting.
see.
But industrial espionage was giant because there were laws. If you invented something, it could be yours for like 3 generations. And then it would be opened up for everyone to do the same thing. So chandeliers, different designs that are very classically Italian are are handed down, but are kept sacred for the person who invented them for a while and then opened up. The history of that area is just very fascinating to me, and it was so wonderful to be able to soak up all the tradition and over the years, just watching more and more factories close on Murano, the cost of gas being so high with the war with Ukraine, the price has gone up 5 times. A lot of my friends, they don't work anymore. It's like all
Yeah.
over for them. And they're just managing the collection of glass they have, and they're doing the best they can, but it's just not easy.
Yeah.
And to know people when they're like 16 and to know that they have this weight of so much ancestral knowledge behind them,
Yes.
and it's
Yeah.
their responsibility to make that business work in a time where every business is failing. It's just so heartbreaking to see all that history and tradition disappear to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But yes,
And
it's very patriarchal out there. I really enjoyed getting to know the area and eating the food and drinking the wine, traveling around with my fellow Fulbrighters. But I was not appreciated for my ability to make art in that area so much. But I did have friends who knew that I could make art and loved me, who were on the island, and that meant a lot.
and it pretty much was because you were a woman, because and they were just used to men making the glass and making decisions and being the creative ones.
Yes, there is like a small history of women being during the war when women ran the beadworks and stuff. So there is like, and there are
World
always
War,
women
which
behind the
war?
scenes.
Not the Ukraine war.
I
Like,
think it was during the Habsburg residency,
okay. Okay.
or not the Ukraine war. This is like maybe I might be mixing it up. So when Napoleon took over the
Yeah.
area, he closed down all the glass making for 50 years,
Yeah.
except for bead making, because the bead making was used so much as currency, right? To trade in Africa and America. And like, so, and the Czech beads also were used for that as well. So it's a very interesting history in that regard. And there's always, women that run the family. My friends, they have the son and the daughter work at the business. It's not, but the daughter's in the office and the
Yep.
son is more of a designer and in the hot shop. So
You're
yes,
so modest. I mean, I think you have broken glass ceilings in Murano. Your skill and your creativity allowed you to do something that not a lot of women can say that they did or have been able to do. Congratulations. And
thank
it's
you
not
so
an
much.
egotistical. This isn't like a hubris thing. It's just a time telling. It's just the storytelling in a different way that women can design. They can work in the hot shop. And you can be an American woman in the hot shop being able to make glass. And, those guys that were able to share time with you are starting to realize that.
Yeah, I feel so lucky. I did work at a factory, and have some of my work made there. And I ended up working with people who had come to Abate Zanetti for classes and that were genuinely like super nice people and had patience to work with me. It was it was such an amazing experience and one I'll never forget. I keep working on being able to go back and doing something there. Um, we'll see in the future. It's hard to keep the ball moving with COVID and everything, so I have to like get back on that. And I would be so excited because I love the food, I love the people. I just want to be on Murano and just hang out there like for a month. Like
Right.
it gets insular, gets insular. Yes.
Yeah, but then you can just take the water taxi and head over to Venice or go beat island hopping down at the beaches.
Oh hell yeah. I loved being in Venice and Murano really brought back to me my childhood growing up on the water. Because there's no bicycles or cars, it's only boats. So, you know, during the day, people are working on their boats, like young men are working on their
Yes.
sound systems because they
Yes.
just want to go out on their boat, play their music and sing Italian songs and just cruise. It's so wonderful. And I didn't do much of the sailing or vogatore, kind of like it's like sculling, but it's a Venetian kind of sculling, what they do in the gondolas with the crook
Oh,
and stuff. I didn't ever do that. That would have been very exciting. But I ate eel. I ate a lot of eel. That's like one of the specialty foods for Murano. That was exciting. And Christmas time they'll have parties in factories and stuff and like put the eel on big trays and the leers and the annealers that are like on tank
oh,
trays and stuff. So they like cook food. It's just incredible. It was so glassy. It was so amazing.
so glassy. You're talking me into it.
Oh yeah, I love
Yeah.
Murano.
Love it. I love it. I do too. I got to go there for the first time in 22 and just had a ball. Just so much technique and love and glass and gold and
Oh,
yeah.
gold. Yes, lots of
Yeah.
gold.
Lots of gold.
Lots of
Lots of gold.
marini, lots of gold. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, how do you think that your work has changed with these lessons that you've learned in your life? Like how did one thing change?
I have to say that because of my education at Rhode Island School of Design, when I started working with glass, we always were encouraged to use it as a sculptural material. But on top of that was this worship of Italian mastery of glass. My teacher from RISD, who I worked for 4 years, he learned from Lino. He was like Lino's second assistant. So I always knew the Italian way of working. And so I was very much in love with Italian glass because it looks so much like cloth. And so when I was younger, that was my goal, was to, like everybody else, I wanted to make goblets. I wanted to make Italian looking work. I wanted to learn from Lino as much as possible. And and so I did that. I did that for many years. In the aughts, I started working for myself. When I returned from my Fulbright, I started working for myself and making my own work. And it was very much using Italian patterning techniques
Mm.
in a very organic way. And I just loved it so much. And it made me really happy. And but I phased out of that after a while because I became more curious about, transforming. When I kept up with working with this type of work, even after I came back from Italy, and I sort of worked on it in tandem, but I'm slower at producing that than I would be at producing a vessel per se. So um, it was more my bread and butter, the vessels, for a while. But then the sculpture started getting noticed. Corning Museum of Glass bought one. I was showing at sofas and things, sculptural art, functional art, sculptural objects, functional art shows that were around the country, and really focusing on that, making work for those type of things, and building up my relationships with museums, having museums purchase the work. It was incredible, but I really think that that was sort of the height of my strength and the height of my ability. And I love working with with blown glass, but
Mm.
no, I don't work with it quite as much. I've had some physical setbacks, a few surgeries and things, and I'm gaining my strength back. And I'd love to make Italian inspired vessels in the future, but I'm really engaging with the concepts of sculpture and the concept of engaging with the community. It's just
Mhm.
very rich for me, and it really puts another layer of meaning onto the artwork
Yeah.
that
The
that it's
relationship
important.
with
That's,
water. Yeah.
yeah, that's important. And I feel my relationship to water is becoming more strident, or something that's just really bubbling up again in my life. And so I really want to listen to that, like, inner child or whatever that's calling me back to it. I'm transitioning my work to have more softer fibers, rather than, I've used copper wire for the past 20 years or so, and it has its difficulties being very stiff and hard. So I'm trying to transition into working with fibers more,
Mhm.
and so we'll see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the your knots that you did in proto kelp, the medium that you chose, the type of rope, the specific knots that you chose for each one of those, it still had this very soft sensibility. And I don't, rope always doesn't give off soft at all.
Right. Well, yes, but I mean, yes, I tried to use a rope made from natural materials, so it had
Mm.
that sort of earthy color to it and texture, and rather than like a slick nylon rope or something
Right.
used more
Yeah.
on a sailboat, because they don't rot and last forever. Like, I love these older, more traditional ways of making fiber. Yeah.
Awesome.
And I really feel connected to it. I use wax nylon to, like, secure things, which is more archival. That's something I've learned to be mindful of, because I've made some rather large pieces with waxed linen, or something that is maybe not, it stretches over time. So you have to be careful. But I'm just so excited about uniting. This is my first time using the sisal rope, and also using silk, like raw silk, that I picked up when I was in Japan. And I just really love, like, the combination of the silk and the steel and the glass together. It really creates, like, creates something that's so cozy. And I'm speaking about the piece that is titled Reach, and it's shaped like human lungs, and it has sort of all the bronchi, all the
Mm.
trachea breaking into all the tubes that go through your lungs, are represented by green tubes that are sort of cut and fit together, and woven into place on top of this beautiful stainless steel um sort of diagram of lungs, and the way the tubes move through it, that I've sort of put a sweater on with the silk. And it was just so satisfying to protect the glass from the steel in this sort of cozy way that ends up looking a little bit domestic. So it has this sort of uh scientific illustration look, but then
Mm.
come to life to a certain extent. And again, the tubes have words from the public engraved on them, and very lightly, so that actually you see the shadow of the word on the glass more than you see the word itself.
Yep.
So it has to be
Yep.
lit very strongly. And I'm a person who suffers from asthma. So for me, I really think a lot about the lungs and my lung health. And also it speaks to me of the oxygen producing ability of kelp, seaweed, diatoms, how we get the majority of our oxygen from the ocean, actually, rather than from land. And which is usually we think like trees and plants make all the oxygen, but actually lots of algae make oxygen too.
I see. I went towards when I saw the lung piece, I was thinking about being inspired, like when you breathe in and you inhale, and then where is that coming from? You
Well,
know,
exactly. Like what's the source? But
what's
also,
this?
yeah, I'm trying to promote sort of like empathy for other species as well, because I fully believe that we are part of the environment. There's no separation from us and the environment. So the health of the environment and the health of human beings
Yeah,
are linked, and the planet, of course. So sort of the species hierarchy that was developed during the Enlightenment
right,
has really done detriment to us, because we don't, yes, we have the ability to have dominion over the environment, but we're
right.
seeing the results of
The
that.
subjugation of it all, too.
Yes, the
Yeah, that
subjugation, that sort of patriarchal mindset of, and also I think has to do with, uh, has to do with capitalism and how we value life in our system, in our societal system. If you can't get a profit from it, then it's not as worthy as something you can get a profit from. So living sustainably might not um, make as much money, but it's easier on the planet and it helps for humanity to survive. And it's going to take us a while to turn our society away from just basic consumerism, if we can, it would be good, to
mhm.
something that's more nurturing for our whole society,
Wow. I
and
love it.
interspecies nurturing as well.
Well, thanks for bringing these topics up and in your in the art and art as a communication tool and keeping your creativity on what you would really want to be leaning into. Yeah, because proto
I
kelp was something
I
different.
appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about it. It's been so fantastic.
That's so can you leave us with a little bit what's on your R&D table, your research and development? Because I mean, I'm so proud of you for finishing that installation. That was a lot of work, and I don't want to put more pressure on you, but just knowing you, I think you might have something on the table.
Well, I feel very fortunate to be able to um work on the installation and install it, because I learned so much from installing the large scale installation of ProtoCalc. And I'm really interested to push it forward. I mean, this is my first time putting words onto glass.
Yeah.
I need more practice at it. I actually, like, my next thing is like, oh, I love those round tubes, but what if we did flat tubing, like flat, so it's more like the blade of whatever type of
Oh,
sea. So like I really want to actually continue the work and continue to experiment with the rope and the glass together, and just to see what happens. My goal, I think it was like a 5-year goal or 10-year goal, is to be able to create a forest of these kelp installation with some beautiful like sound of what it sounds like in a kelp forest underwater, and be able to install that somewhere permanently, who knows, like or just have a museum show, and get the, because it's and to work on getting residencies and grants to support this, because I'm not looking for a cash payout at the end. I want to progress my work, and I want to have the opportunity to work with the city and raise awareness for marine ecology, as well as creating an environment where people can come in and it makes them curious, more curious about marine ecology or marine life. That makes me happy. And I think it just really has to link back to my childhood fascination and the peace and the connection that I felt living in nature and being in nature, and that sort of wholeness, which living in a city, you don't always feel that way. But when I get a chance to experience amazing things, I get so excited about that. Low tides, go to
Yes.
Whidbey, like I've been harvesting kelp and drying it. And it's like, I also want to do a little bit of like, bioplastics with the experiment with bioplastics with the kelp that I have harvested, and just keep pushing the envelope, trying new things. It helps my brain so much to stay nimble. To how did we get these words onto the glass? Well, we had to use tattoo paper and a thermal printer, and then the speed stick for a tattoo, and it was like setting up to have a tattoo. It was so
Right.
fascinating. Like, what other solutions are out there? What other problems are out there? I love
Right.
solving problems.
Stay curious. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, for
Um,
those that are
yeah,
looking
and
forward to,
so in that vein, I'm still collecting words of appreciation for kelp. So if anybody would like to do that, they can always just leave some words on my contact form on one of my websites. That would be
oh,
fantastic. And
katerhoads.com, and
yep,
then
I've got katerhoads.com for my high art website, and then I have a design website, so katerhoadsdesign.com, and that is for my smaller designs like my sea stones and my jewelry
yeah.
and my earrings, which are some of the lower cost things that I make, but I still love all of it.
Right. Yeah. Entry level collectors can still take part.
That's why I made the jewelry, because when I started weaving these pieces, people wanted them, but they were too expensive. But then they could get a bracelet or some earrings and it would be affordable and they could still remember my work. So, yeah.
Yeah. That was so great. I love, and it's just gleaning from your high art work, just always thinking about how to use it in a creative way.
Right. And then, and like, that's the hierarchy, right? Like between high and low art, and it shouldn't really exist, but I mean, it does in our society. So,
It does. I mean, what else are the art historians and curators going to do? I mean,
oh, well, they got to do something. They got to make divisions somewhere.
yes.
But
Yeah.
thank you again for this opportunity. I really like what you've been doing, Jody, with your podcast, and I'm excited to see where it goes from here.
Thank you. Me too. Me too. Upwards and onwards for sure.